Hello and welcome to Simple Analyst. Today I just wanted to talk about design in a nutshell. And when I talk of design, I mean design in this sense. I'm looking at wireframing. Again, this is for the purpose of maybe being product owner, business analyst. In this case, we're talking of design from a business perspective, right? So just to kind of quickly, I'm going by my slides I've put together. So I'll just make a couple of points. As you can see, I've been writing on the slides, just kind of highlight some certain points of mine. So to begin with, when we talk about design, one of the things that we try to even understand itself is what are we doing. So in this case, we're looking at, is it a potential solution? Is it a problem? We need to understand exactly why we are doing these things, right? So the first things I will look at in this case is what is a problem or what is a solution in terms of that. By me having these, then I can kind of understand the scope of work that I need to do. Is quite important, the scope of work, right? Because we don't want to be in a situation where we are offering less than what is required or offering more than what is required. Because even if you think that by offering more than what is required is kind of good, don't forget that you are a resource as well. And sometimes it could eat into other projects that you're working on. So you want to be conscious of these factors when you're making these decisions, right? So the next one is the goal. And basically, I use examples in this case to kind of show a little bit or to kind of explain in more detail so you can have a better understanding. But essentially what we're trying to look when we talk about the goals is just purpose of doing this. By us understanding the purpose, we know exactly who are the target groups of people that we need to talk to. Who is the solution, or in this case, problem targeted towards, right? And what purpose is going to serve in terms of their need. Again, we are looking at the overall goal. In my case, it just basically was to satisfy the need of a more connected and engaging work environment. And that's why they had this need to kind of have this internal social network platform. So this is the goal of what they're trying to kind of achieve in this case. And the next thing that we're looking at in this case will be the impacts, right? So we try to understand what's the impact. And when I talk of impact, it is basically who are the people that are going to be impacted, not just people, but what processes are going to be impacted. Because a lot of things, by you implementing these changes or by you kind of drawing out these wireframes, are going to have some effects or some impact on the company, on the organization. So we just want to understand the people that are going to be impacted. And from these people, we have to choose a few of those personas to kind of represent when we all think about when we join our wireframes in this case. In my case, for the app that we're trying to create, I'm thinking about senior hires. I'm thinking about even new hires. Again, this is just a few I've chosen at this moment in time. These are the few that are going to be using the app. And basically, this is how we kind of go about it. So when it comes down to really all of these, if I say on a holistic level, I'll look at three things. The goal, which tells me the why, the scope of work, how much I have to dig into or how much work we need to cover, how much grounds we're trying to cover, and the persons that are going to be impacted by this. This is just the logic reason that I have behind all of this. So this is just the way I go about it. So when I'm giving a project or I have to tackle a project like this, the first things that come into my mind. So I'm trying to understand the why. I'm trying to see what's the scope of work, the persons are going to be impacted. Then based on this information, then I can kind of choose a certain group of people to kind of go about to understand or to go into more details. So once we have our selected group of persons that we want to kind of do research on, then we can go into another phase of this design process where it's called user research. User research essentially is just us kind of understanding the various aspects of how what we're trying to implement is going to affect them, the impact it's going to have on these persons. And we have to kind of elaborate a little bit more on this. So in terms of my user research, key stuff I'm looking at maybe is what are the things they're trying to do with the application? In my case, it's an application that I'm talking about. So what are the kind of pain points that they have that they want to solve? Or maybe not just pain points. Again, sorry about the slide. I really made this slide long time ago, but then I'm just trying to just kind of cover it. We're not just talking of pain points. It could be as for the potential solutions. So what are the benefits in this case that are being heard in implementing this solution? On the other hand, we're looking as well the pain points that they have in this case. The other aspect of things is the method of gathering this information. So we're thinking about, I'm thinking about workshops, I'm thinking about one-to-one. So I'm just trying to understand exactly how or go about getting this information. And of course, one of the most important things is to find out user influence. The user influence is going to be something of great importance, because it's everything in terms of how it affects our design, how it affects our wireframing, because we are not building something for ourselves, we're building for the users. So the users are the one that are going to tell us what they need, or in this case, which user flow is going to be more efficient to them, or which is more preferable, because then we're trying to make something that's successful, in this case not for ourselves but for the organization. So the user's influence on the design is really huge in this case. So which brings me to this point where I just said, from this slide, 3 things I'm looking at, the impact it's going to have on the users, right? So I just made a couple of notes like, okay, it's going to help them to work better, it's going to help them to have better engagement. And of course, how to go about gathering these requirements. Is it by a workshop? Is it a one-to-one? Is it even by surveys, right? So there are lots of other techniques that will be implied in this case that we can use to kind of gather this information, and as well as the user's influence that's going to have on our wireframing process. And then just took a couple of examples in terms of personas, again, fictional characters in this case, right, that we're trying to build. In this case, we have James and we've got David. They've got different agenda. If you can see that, yes, you can see that now. So this is just at a very high level of what we do, because we're trying to just put out the personas. This will contain more, right? Because sometimes you have more information in terms of what they're going to use maybe the app for. It could be something here the app could be used maybe to connect, right, to maybe new employees. It depends, right, in this case. Another example in this case would be, for example, David will have a different approach in terms of what he's trying to achieve. So when we're talking about personas, remember when I spoke about where is it even, persons. So it's just translated in this case into personas, right? Persons in this case is translated into personas. And personas, essentially what it covers is just from the user's perspective. In this case, we have to choose different type of users. In the company, we have different type of users. So how you interact with the system is different from how your manager or maybe how a different colleague is going to interact with the system. So you have a different perspective of how you use the system. And again, these things that you have to represent when going about your wireframing, because it's going to influence your wireframing process. The next thing that we're looking at is competitive analysis. What this looks into is why this, in this case, in the case we're looking at an application, right? What's so particular about this application essentially? So is it something that we could have maybe procured ourselves from somewhere else? Is there an application out there that we could have made use of rather than actually building everything from scratch? So this is what competitive analysis will kind of look into and see if there's anything that's out there that's kind of comparable to what we're doing, and seeing maybe if we can kind of see what are the good stuff that they've got that we want to implement on our applications, right? So this is all about what competitive analysis is going to look at. And basically you having this idea in terms of what we're trying to establish or what we're trying to use in this case, then we can kind of go to kind of plot the user flow. User flow is different for every user. Remember the persona we had? So I'm talking of persona here. So essentially user flow is particular to the various persona. I mentioned earlier that different people are going to have different ways of approaching an app or even using an application, right? So let's say if you're working at a company and you're working at the level of maybe being an administrator, you have a different workflow versus someone that is maybe doing finance. In terms of the same application, right, you're clicking on different buttons. He or she is clicking on different buttons. You guys have different interactions with the system. So this is what the user flow is going to entail. So in this case, if I just have to zoom it a little bit there, again, I'll be doing a more detail when it comes down to the user flow and how to kind of plot this. Again, at this point in time, just trying to give you a very high level of what I'm trying to do, essentially. So in terms of the user flow, as you can see, we have the entry, welcome, you set it a task, maybe task 1. Is that correct? Then you can go back. So it's just how the user is going to interact essentially with this app in question. So then, of course, once you have all of this, remember, I'll just give you a recap of what we did earlier on. We spoke about identifying the problems, understanding the purpose, and of course, seeing the impacts of all the persons it was going to affect. And based on these persons, which are technically your personas, we would then go then to do our user research. Okay, and from our user research, we have the various pain points or the various potential benefits that they're going to have from this system in this case, or maybe internal app. And of course, you need to go about the way of gathering these requirements. So what are we talking about? Surveys, workshop, one-to-one. So this is all about that. And of course, the influence that the user will have in terms of our design. Then next, we give a couple of examples in terms of the various personas and how you go about just putting these personas. And again, it's going to have much more details than what you actually see at this moment in time. So to kind of finish this, if I can see clearly today. So to kind of finish this, we have, of course, we spoke about the user flows, right? So in terms of our user flow, how the users essentially are going to interact with the app, or how they're going to use the app for their own benefit in this case. And basically, after we've plotted the user flow, then we go about now to kind of now actually do the wireframing. The wireframing is going to be based on the user flow that we have plotted. So these two are really interlinked in a way, because based on the persona and based on how these users are going to use the app, then we have to kind of have different wireframes. Like, again, you have to think about the system or think about the user in the perspective that they'll be doing different things at different time and they will not have the same interaction with the app. So you have to kind of show or portray with various wireframes for the majority of users. When you're doing your wireframe, or when you're kind of putting all this together, you have to just think about this. Again, you have to go about maybe 2 or 3 to begin with and see, and kind of work your way from there. And of course, the last, but not the least in this case, is to kind of remember I did mention in terms of the impact. Once you are doing your user research, this is going to be happening. So you have your impact at this level. The impact, basically, you want to know what the people that this is going to impact, or the system that's going to impact, the processes that's going to impact. And based on this, you have to kind of go about documenting this impact, right? So how you go about documenting impact is kind of particular to every company. There are different ways of going about this. I'll go into this in more details on one of my courses, but for right now, you just have to just understand that, again, when it comes down to the impact, you need to find a way to document this impact, because there are things that you have to keep in terms of records. And that's basically design in a nutshell. Again, you have to understand that this is just to cover at a very high level what design / wireframing entails when it comes down to the business perspective, especially when it comes down to people such as business analysts, product owner, product managers, project managers themselves, just to give you a kind of better understanding of how you go about the process. What I'm going to do, I'm going to leave a copy of the slides themselves on the link below, so you can kind of find them and kind of change them as up to your needs. Just see what's important for you and just kind of grab and see how you can make use of this. Thank you. If you do like content like this, please do not forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It does help new content creators like ourselves grow. So until next time, see you soon.